Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Parenting Lab. I have been a working mom for the bulk of my kids' childhoods. I've worked full time, I've worked part time, I've been a full time student while I was working. My kids have a lot of memories of coming to work with me or my husband, or switching cars in parking lots because one of us was starting work and one of us was ending work. Working both inside and outside of our home has just been a really huge part of my parenting experience, and one that I've been thinking about a lot lately because we are all so deeply impacted by our jobs. Jobs that we have, jobs that we want or need, jobs that we lose or find or love or hate. Like it or not, home life and work life intersect all the time. But sometimes we talk about work life and home life as though they exist in completely separate worlds. Like somehow there's a version of you that walks into the office or logs into Zoom, leads meetings and answers emails, manages projects, solves problems, performs under pressure. And then there's this other completely separate version of you that then comes home and parents your kids and navigates relationships and handles emotions and manages all of the invisible labor of family life. And in the middle of all of that, tries to stay connected to yourself. Right? And culturally, we've almost normalized this idea that successful adults should be able to compartmentalize all of that seamlessly. Like each little piece of us is supposed to fit neatly inside a little box. Leave work at work. Leave home at home. Don't bring your emotions into professional spaces. Don't let personal stress affect your performance. Push through, stay productive, keep functioning. But the more I work with parents and become more aware of my own tug of war between work and family life, the more obvious it becomes to me that human beings don't actually function in compartments nearly as well as we pretend to, because our nervous systems don't compartmentalize. Stress does follow us home. Resentment does follow us into meetings. Disconnection does follow us into our conversations, right? And burnout follows us everywhere. But so does fulfillment and emotional safety and connection. And I think that's important because for a long time, conversations around work life balance have focused mostly on time management. How do we divide our hours more evenly? How do we become more efficient? How do we juggle all of our roles in a more effective way? But I don't actually think the biggest issue for most people is time. I think we all have lots of time. What I think is that we've learned to use time to distract us from the fact that a lot of people feel like they're constantly shifting identities all day long, trying to meet competing expectations in environments that are pulling them in oftentimes opposite directions. And eventually, that creates friction internally. Because when our values don't align with the way we're living, or when our home feels chaotic and work life feels demanding, or when we feel emotionally disconnected from the people we love while we're trying to succeed professionally, it's very, very difficult to find any real fulfillment in either space. And what's interesting is that there's research being done all the time that supports this idea that our well-being at home and our well-being at work are deeply interconnected, not just emotionally, but cognitively and relationally and even physiologically. Studies show that the quality of our relationships affects our stress levels and our focus, our creativity and resilience, our communication, and even our physical health. And there's also studies that show that workplace stress affects our emotional availability and our patience and our ability to connect and regulate at home, which means that the parent and the professional are not actually separate at all. They're the same human person carrying the same nervous system into every room they enter. And today, I want to talk about that. Not from the perspective of achieving perfect balance, because honestly, I don't know that balance should be the goal. I don't even know that it's achievable. All right. And we're going to talk about that. Instead, I want to talk to you about alignment. What it means to build a life where your work and your relationships, your values, your goals, and your internal world stop fighting each other so much. So, where does this fight come from? I think one of the biggest misconceptions in our modern culture is the belief that emotional well being is separate from performance. as though relationships can be in one category, but then productivity belongs in another. But when you really look at the research around stress and nervous systems and emotional regulation, attachment, communication, we talk about all of this here in the Parenting Lab. All of this research makes it very clear that our relational world, which is our internal sense of self and our families and our friends, affects almost everything about how we function as human beings, because the environments we spend the most time in shape who we are. And for most adults, the two environments that shape us the most are home and work. Those are the places where we spend the majority of our time and our energy, our attention and our emotional capacity. And it's also where we experience the most pressure and responsibility and conflict and achievement and disappointment and meaning. And they don't exist independently of each other. They interact constantly. When there's tension in your marriage, when parenting feels overwhelming, when you're carrying stress that never lets up, that doesn't simply disappear when you arrive at work. And just the opposite. Workplace stress doesn't magically just go away when you walk through the front door at the end of the day. We carry those experiences with us because we carry ourselves with us, right? We can't go anywhere without ourselves. And that's important to understand because stress is physiological before it's behavioral. It's happening in our bodies before we ever even notice it in the things that we do. A nervous system that's under chronic stress just functions differently. We become more reactive. We become less patient, more easily overwhelmed. Our capacity for creativity and flexibility and problem solving begins to narrow or just shrink, right? Not because we're weak or lazy or incapable, but because our brains and our bodies are just working too hard to manage all of the demands that we're placing on them. But the opposite of that is also true. When our relationships feel supportive, when we experience connection and trust and belonging and safety, we tend to move through the world with greater capacity. We have more resilience and more flexibility and more energy available for the challenges that come up. And this is why I think parenting is such an important conversation here, especially for working parents. And just to clarify, all parents are working parents, right? Because parenting sits right at the intersection of these two worlds. And it has a way of exposing every fracture line in our lives. Why? Because parenting, unlike most of the roles that we play, isn't temporary. It's not a job that starts and ends at the close of the day. It's not a relationship we casually choose or walk away from. Our children are born to us. We don't get to handpick their personalities or their needs or their struggles or their sensitivities. We just get what we get. You can leave jobs, you can move cities, you can end relationships and reinvent your style. You can even reshape parts of your identity. But parenting, it's different. Parenting changes who you are on a cellular level. It becomes woven into you. And it's not just something that you do, but it's something that transforms the way you see yourself and the world and the people that you love. It exposes where we're overwhelmed, where we're unsupported, where our values conflict, where our coping strategies aren't working anymore, where our nervous system is overloaded, and where we've built lives that look functional on the outside, but don't actually feel sustainable internally. And I think many, many parents, both moms and dads, are carrying an enormous amount of invisible emotional labor that never gets accounted for in conversations about performance or success or well-being. All right. And these aren't just tasks. I'm talking real emotional labor. And that's holding schedules and managing needs and anticipating emotions and navigating behavior and absorbing stress and staying patient when you just have nothing left. Okay. Staying connected when you're overwhelmed. And it's trying to succeed professionally while you're also building meaningful family relationships. And that is not a small thing for a nervous system to carry every day. And yet many people are silently believing that they should be able to do all of this flawlessly without support and without integration and without it affecting them emotionally. But you guys, we were never designed to function like a machine. We are creatures that crave relationship, which means that the quality of how we relate to others, including the relationship we have with ourselves, affects the quality of every single other thing we do. And honestly, I think this is part of why the idea or the goal of achieving this work life balance can feel so frustrating for so many people. Because even the phrase itself implies like opposition. It's work versus life, it's success versus presence, ambition versus connection, career versus family. As though these parts of ourselves are competing for limited resources all the time. And for a lot of people, that creates this constant internal feeling that they're failing at something. Like if you're succeeding professionally, maybe you're feeling guilty at home. Or if you're deeply invested at home, maybe you worry that you're falling behind at work. Or if you rest, you feel unproductive. If you push harder, you feel disconnected. Right? There's this belief that somewhere out there is a perfectly balanced version of life where everything finally sits in equal proportion and everything is in reach so that no one needs to feel stretched anymore. But I don't know that life actually works that way. I know it's not how the body works. My daughter is a bodybuilder, so we talk about conditioning all the time. But if you've ever lifted weights or done core work, you know that the muscles engage the most when there's instability. If you're standing perfectly balanced on 2 feet, you're upright, but you're not engaging. The moment the body is slightly off center, though, all of those stabilizing muscles start to wake up. Your core activates. Okay, those tiny little adjustments happen constantly to bring you back into alignment and build strength. And I think parenting and honestly life works the same way. Growth doesn't come from balance or never being thrown off balance. It comes from learning how to realign when you are off balance, because balance suggests equal distribution, but life is rarely equally distributed. Sometimes we need to focus more on work. Sometimes our family needs our full attention. And sometimes we need to devote more resources to our own healing or grief or recovery or growth or increasing our capacity. And when we hold ourselves to this rigid idea of perfect balance in all of those areas, we often just end up creating more pressure and more shame. And honestly, I feel like when we're trying to keep everything balanced, we end up just frozen in place. Because if we tilt or waver in any direction too far, everything will just come crashing down. So I feel like what many people are actually craving isn't balance, it's alignment. Alignment feels different. Alignment asks, does the way I'm living reflect what matters most to me? Do my decisions align with my values? Does my schedule support the kind of relationships I want to build? Does my work environment support the kind of human being I'm trying to become? Do the expectations I'm carrying actually belong to me? Or am I living inside these inherited definitions of success that are costing me connection and peace, health, or presence? Misalignment is exhausting, but it shows up all the time. We say yes to things that violate our values. We perform in identities that don't fit us anymore. We suppress our emotions all day at work and then wonder why we explode at home. We spend our lives caring for everyone else while we become increasingly disconnected from who we are. And what's hard is that from the outside, a lot of people still look incredibly successful while they're living this way. They're functioning, performing, they're even achieving lots of really cool things. But internally, there's this sense of fragmentation. Like we're just being broken down and used for parts. Like life has become something to manage in pieces instead of something to meaningfully experience. And this is one of the reasons that parenting becomes such a profound turning point for so many adults. Because children have a way of interrupting autopilot. They expose where our systems aren't sustainable anymore. Okay? They expose that gap between our intentions and our capacity, and the difference between the life that we've built and the life that we actually want to live. Not because parenting ruins our alignment, but because it forces us to confront whether our lives were ever truly aligned in the first place. Now, I keep using this word alignment, which can sound a little bit vague, but it's actually very practical. So let me explain where I'm coming from here. Alignment is when the major parts of your life are all moving in the same direction. It's when your values and your goals and your behaviors, your relationships, and the environments that you are in are all working together instead of pulling against each other. Think about how much energy it takes to move something when there's opposing forces involved. Okay. It's like if you've ever tried to push a shopping cart when one of the wheels is like locked or sideways. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You can still push the cart forward. You can still make progress, but it's clumsy and it's clunky and it's noisy and it takes way more effort than it needs to. All right. And I think a lot of people are living that way. They're moving forward, they're functioning, they're accomplishing things, but everything is harder than it needs to be because there are these competing forces underneath the surface. So maybe they say that family is their highest priority, but every decision is being driven by the fear of failing professionally or falling behind. Maybe they value connection, but their schedule doesn't leave any room for it. Maybe they want peace, but they've built a life that reinforces constant urgency. Or maybe they want to be present with their kids, but they're carrying so much unresolved stress that they're never really fully available anywhere to anyone. The issue here is not that they're bad parents or bad employees or bad leaders. The issue is that something is out of alignment. And the beautiful thing about alignment is that it isn't about perfection. It's about congruence. All right. It's about making sure the life that you're building reflects the person that you're trying to become. Now, one of the things I see a lot in my work is that people know, or at least have a good idea of what they value, but they haven't slowed down long enough to examine whether their daily lives actually reflect those values. So, for example, a lot of people tell me that they value family, but family is rarely the actual value. Family is usually the expression of a deeper value. Now, that value might be connection or belonging or growth or love or adventure or security. Okay. When we identify those deeper values, something super cool happens because now suddenly we have a framework for decision making. Instead of asking, whoa, what should I do? We can start asking what is most aligned with who I want to be. And that question changes everything because now we're not making decisions based solely on guilt or pressure or expectations or what everybody else is doing. We are making decisions based on values and intention. And that creates a very, very different experience. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll work less or yell less or that every decision will just be clear and easy. What it does mean is that decisions start to make sense. There's less internal conflict, less second guessing or resentment, or feeling like you're being pulled apart by competing priorities. Because when your values are clear, they become a compass to help you navigate those decisions. They help you decide what deserves your energy, what to say yes to, what to say no to, and probably most importantly, they help you be consistent with who you are at home and who you are at work and who you are when no one else is there to witness it. The goal in all of this is really just to become the same person everywhere. A person that's guided by their values in parenting and leadership and relationships and decisions. That is alignment. But you cannot align to something that you can't see or don't understand. You can't make good decisions and intentional decisions about patterns that you don't recognize under the surface. And what I see all the time as I work with parents is that they are trying incredibly hard to solve problems at the surface level. They want better routines, better communication, better time management, better boundaries, and all of those things absolutely matter. But sometimes the challenge isn't a scheduling problem or a resource problem. It's an awareness problem. For example, I worked with a parent once that came to a session with me for help creating a schedule because they were constantly overwhelmed. But as we started exploring what was really going on, we discovered that they were actually saying yes to everything for a few different reasons. One, they were afraid of disappointing people. Two, they felt responsible for everyone else's happiness. And three, they grew up in a home where downtime was viewed as laziness. And once that connection was made, suddenly we are not talking about calendars anymore. We're talking about beliefs and patterns and identity. And it's those deeper layers that affect home life and work life. Because the person who struggles to set boundaries at work often struggles to set boundaries at home. And the person who feels responsible for fixing everyone's problems is probably exhausted in every environment they enter. And the person who constantly is seeking validation externally may be carrying that pattern into their parenting or their work performance, their friendships, their marriage, whatever. Again, we're not talking about separate people, all right? Not the work me and the home me. We're talking about one person carrying the same patterns into multiple relationships and environments. And this is why I think parenting is so much more than just a set of techniques. It's not just about getting kids to cooperate. It's not just about behavior charts or consequences or scripts for better communication. Parenting really is an invitation to notice what we're carrying, to examine the stories that we've inherited and believe, to understand our nervous systems and identify the values that we want to live by, and to close that gap between our intentions and our actions. And that growth doesn't stay contained within parenting. It spills into everything else. Because with that awareness, people then communicate differently at work. They lead differently. They make decisions differently. They handle conflict differently. They even experience themselves differently. And that's why I'm saying that parenting is less about raising our children and more about raising our awareness. It's inviting us to become more conscious and more intentional and more aligned in every area of our lives. And while that process can be challenging, I don't challenging doesn't even begin to describe it. It just breaks you completely open. But if you can get through the break and the process of healing, the transformation is incredibly liberating. Because once you see the patterns, you don't have to default to them anymore. Awareness allows us to respond and show up differently. So instead of getting stuck in guilt, we get curious. And instead of feeling like we have to defend ourselves, we're able to take responsibility. And instead of pretending that everything is fine, we can fix what needs fixing, even if it's hard. And as we keep doing that, keep showing up, those small little moments start to change us and they close that gap. All right, that gap between intention and reality, and align us to what actually matters. And this transformation, honestly, it's rarely big and dramatic. Most people I work with don't quit their jobs and move to cabins in the woods. They don't just suddenly eliminate all of the stress from their lives, and their kids don't magically act the way they think they should. Their schedules and their jobs and responsibilities, none of that just becomes effortless. It's deeper than that. What happens is they stop fighting themselves. They become clear about what matters. They make decisions with more confidence because those decisions are grounded in values instead of pressure. All right. They can communicate more effectively because they understand their own needs better. And they're able to create healthier boundaries because they know now what it is they're protecting. But the best part is that it's not just personal. All right. The sense of alignment is relational. So being aligned here within ourselves changes our homes and our families and our jobs. And that is why I believe this work matters so much, because it helps people build lives that feel more cohesive, lives where values and relationships and goals and daily choices are all telling the same story. And there's something incredibly powerful about living a life that is like that. And you can get there. But to get there, you don't need another productivity system. You don't need a better planner or another set of rules to follow. What you need is space to reflect and become aware of what actually matters most to you. All right, to examine the patterns and beliefs and expectations that are shaping your life, and to choose with intention what is going to come next. And that is the work that I love doing. Whether I'm coaching parents or doing workshops or partnering with businesses that want to support their employees, the people behind the job titles, the conversation is often the same. How do we create lives that feel more connected and intentional and aligned? How do we help people thrive, not just professionally, but personally? And how do we build cultures, both at home and at work, that support the well being and growth and potential of everyone within them? Because at the end of the day, healthy companies and organizations are made up of healthy people, and healthy families are made up of healthy people. And both begin with awareness and alignment. So, if today's conversation resonated with you at all, I would encourage you to spend just a little bit of time reflecting on this one question. And that is, where in your life are you experiencing the most friction right now? And what is that friction trying to tell you? What might be out of alignment? Where is that squeaky wheel? As your parent coach, I can't give you all the answers, and I won't give you shortcuts. But what I can do is offer resources and support that will challenge your thinking and shift your perspectives and crack you open so you can engage in this work and transform how you show up in your world. So if you're ready to realign, or even to feel true alignment for the first time ever, it all starts with knowing your core values. Having access to your core values is absolutely foundational to all of the other work we do here in the Parenting Lab. I have several different resources for you that I'm going to link to in the show notes that go to varying depths on this. From a simple download that you can get for free to a 50-page workbook that will take you on an absolute emotional journey. Please find the one that matches your capacity right now. Start small if you need to, and go deeper as you find the space and the emotional resources to do it. These exercises can be very exposing and very raw. So please reach out to me if coaching support would be helpful. I am here for you always. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and thank you for being willing to consider the possibility that the goal isn't balance, but alignment. Okay? Until next time, please take care of yourself, take care of each other, and keep doing the work that aligns you with who you want to be at home and at work and everywhere in between. I will see you all next week, where we'll continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Take care, everyone.